Welcome back to Bleav in the Broncos. We took a short break, but we're back. On the Bleav Network, sponsored by Bet Online. That is Bri Maestas. I'm Patrick Chiotti. The Kansas City Chiefs, unfortunately, are heading back to the Super Bowl. They will face off against the red-hot Philadelphia Eagles, a rematch of the Super Bowl a couple years ago. I'm not super pumped. I know a lot of Broncos country is not super pumped to have to watch a division rival play in the Super Bowl yet again. But alas, here we are. Bri, so good to see you. So glad that we took a little break from the show, but we're back. How are you feeling? And how are you feeling about having to watch the dang old Chiefs in the Super Bowl, man?
I know we'll get into it a little bit later, but I'm not looking forward to it. And honestly, I've weighed my opportunity to skip this one, right? If I can make it through this weekend without football, I think I can make it through a second one, but we will see if I actually hold true to that. But doing well, glad we took a week off and hoping the brain cells are going to start multiplying themselves so I can get back on track here.
Completely understand. Yes, the brain cells needed a little refresh after the playoff game. The rest of the playoffs, the NFL playoffs have been so much fun. We'll talk a little bit about Buffalo, Kansas City. We'll talk a little bit about Philadelphia, Washington, and the upcoming Super Bowl matchup. We're going to talk about the Broncos coaching staff getting poached all over the league, Bri. This is something that I don't think any of us really saw coming, but Broncos coaching staff, Sean Payton Tree, getting a lot of love across the league. What a surprise. Color me shocked. We're going to cover that as well as some other Broncos news in this episode of Bleav in the Broncos, sponsored by Bet Online. And I'll tell you what, Bri, the biggest weekend of betting of the year is finally here, which means more updated odds and props for Super Sunday. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. We have hundreds of prop bets, MVP odds, and exclusive in-game live betting. Bet Online is your ultimate game day companion. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, Bet Online offers you everything and more to enhance your game day experience. Visit the website today and make game day action count a little bit more. God. Bet Online. The game starts here. Bri, where we're going to start is with this Broncos coaching staff. Some interesting hires away from the Broncos staff, but also a little in-house cleaning, should we say. The Broncos did part ways with inside linebackers coach Greg Minuski, as well as special teams coordinator Ben Kotwicka. We covered that a couple weeks ago, but it was still a pretty significant move for this organization because these are, Minuski's been with the team for 2 seasons now. Kotwicka was, came in with the other assistant coach or the assistant head coach who had to step away, and they were kind of seen as a package deal. So that move was, seen maybe as making a little more sense. But the inside linebackers coach getting fired was not something that a lot of us saw coming. What were your thoughts on this? And do you think that this was the right move?
It's hard to tell because I can't figure out if it's a perfect storm of when a team is doing well and they're exceeding expectations. The league takes notice and teams want to know what you're doing, how you're doing it. And then oftentimes they want to interview your coaches to get that intel, or they want to take your coaches because they like how they've done what they've done. So you see a special teams turnover the entirety of the staff. And most of that's due to Mike Westhoff having to step down. That was all kind of a package deal there. So I'm not too worried about that one. But then there's a little bit of a question mark of who is going to follow that path moving forward. Are the Broncos eligible to lose additional staff? And does that beg a little bit of attention to, is this a good thing or a bad thing at this point? I've never seen this amount of interest or turnover at this rate. And you're seeing it at the executive level. You're seeing it at individuals being asked to step down. We know the inside linebacker position has been of a question mark this season. I didn't think they were going to relate it conflate it with the coach themselves. But I think at a certain point you have to cut your losses there and consider a complete turnover of that positional group and that room in general. So not completely shocked by that. I honestly thought Vance Joseph could have been gone this season. We mentioned Jim Leonard and Davis Webb being names to watch, and that was actually pretty shocking to me that Davis Webb would be in rotation for that, although he's done a miraculous job there with the quarterback room. And again, Bo Nix exceeding kind of expectations this season. You have to tie that to not only his individual skill set, but what Webb was able to do with Stidham and Nix and Wilson. And I'm sure that his name is highly touted after. I don't and would not be shocked if he finds something elsewhere in the coming seasons, but it does beg the question of what do the Broncos need to do to retain that type of talent, because continuity is super important. And I preach it all the time. I don't want a whole lot of variables year to year, because then you can't tell what's actually working. I think losing most of your staff can be a little bit of a scarlet letter here. And so if individuals are moving on at this path, you can chalk it up to it being a lot of interest from outside teams. You can chalk it up to a lot of things not working internally. But at the end of the day, Pat, I want to know, are you concerned at all of it in a negative lens? Because I know we can throw out there jestingly that are people jumping ship, but is there a concern when you flush that many people, when you just cleanse your team and organization so much after so much went right?
Yeah, I think, if it was like a complete overhaul of, the defense didn't do well in the playoffs, so, Vance, you're gone, they move on from other position coaches, then I'd probably feel a little more stressed out about like, ugh, what's going on here? We were all kind of on Vance watch for some of these head coaching positions. They all got filled. So, don't have to worry about that there. If this was a case of jumping ship, well, Vance Joseph would probably be on his way to Jacksonville to be the next defensive coordinator there, or, on his way to Vegas to be the next defensive coordinator for Pete Carroll. Neither of those are happening. He's staying in Denver, so non-point for me. The special teams thing, with Westhoff being the package deal, I think that kind of made sense to me. Would have maybe loved to see Kotwicka stick around, but with Banjo also getting that interest from other teams, and now he's the special teams coordinator in New York, of course. I feel okay. Like it feels like they have a plan in place. Specifically watching the New Orleans head coaching search, right? Like Vance Joseph isn't a candidate for that job, I don't think. They've really got their eyes set on an offensive guy. So that leaves interim head coach for the Saints, Darren Rizzi, who was Sean Payton's special teams coordinator for a bit, open for a job. And hey, the Denver Broncos have a special teams coordinator job open. Boom, makes perfect sense, right? So if it was more people, if they were firing whole position coaches, right? DB coach, cornerbacks, positions in unison, they fired the inside linebackers coach, but not the outside linebackers coach, right? They moved on from, they allowed, the passing game coordinator to leave, the tight ends coach to leave. That's fine. They're getting promotions. Those guys are going to be offensive coordinators in Chicago and Detroit, respectively. And that's a promotion. Chris Banjo is going to be the special teams coordinator, not just the assistant special teams coach, right? So they're getting promotions. They're getting pay bumps. Sean Payton's been talked about a little bit during the head coaching hiring cycle. Shout out to Aaron Glenn for calling out, Sean Payton as a reason for this success. But I think if, to answer your question in a long-winded way, if they were moving on from more people, I think I would be a little bit more concerned, but I don't feel as concerned. I think they're doing this for a reason. The inside linebacker play over the last 2 seasons, while the talent in the room wasn't stellar or spectacular, they kind of had to do what they needed to do with what they had. It was still frustrating at times. We could not cover a running back out of the backfield to save our lives all season. We saw the run fit disaster in the playoff game. They got absolutely exposed, and to be completely frank, they were getting exposed throughout the whole second half of the season. So I think that it was the right move. I'm excited to see how Sean Payton fills that role and how he goes on from here. So I'm pretty excited to see if Darren Rizzi is going to be the next special teams coordinator. Awesome. If someone like maybe a former player like Todd Davis decides to become the inside linebackers coach or gets that interest as the inside linebackers coach for Denver, I wouldn't be too mad. I'm willing to give him a shot. Just find somebody who can properly execute what you're wanting and your standard for what this team is. I think you said it perfectly. Like, you got to the playoffs. Now the standard is set, but if there's coaches who aren't really, whose positions aren't really up to that standard, you got to move on. Got to get away from it. You mentioned the executives, and I want to talk about that for a little bit. The Broncos did lose a couple of executives, I Bleav. What kind of impact do you think that would have on the Broncos organization? And do you see that as a good sign for the Broncos organization as it stands right now? Or do you see that as like a maybe there's something going on behind closed doors? Who knows?
No, I think traditionally you'd want to see that, especially as one of those executive roles kind of was bore out of a scouting internship, and it was
Right.
like climbing through the ranks. And I think the Broncos organization as a whole does a really great job of promoting from within, which is why I just sort of wanted to see more of that. The longstanding nature of wanting to keep coaches and executives and pay them and continue to foster them moving up, as long as it's working, right? As long as the culture is there, as long as you're building that expectation from the inside. And I think that's what the Broncos are really good at doing and have been for a really long time, is making sure that their people are taken care of. And at a certain point, you age out of that process and you move on to greener pastures, and there's a bigger opportunity in which you were kind of raised and nurtured to do. So I think that that's just a testament of what the organization has done as a whole. So I'm not too worried about that, but you do lose a little bit of that veteran status inside the executive office, right? Someone who's been there for a long time. That to me shows the maturation of the process of gaining new ownership and getting new head coaches in, that ultimately executive teams and PR teams and et cetera will turn over a new leaf, and you'll start to see a different product from the Denver Broncos. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think it's the nature of progression. Oftentimes, and I'm looking straight at the Dallas Cowboys when I say this, is if you have something for too long, it tends to get a little stale and a little predictive, and continues to not win playoff games for 30 plus years. So I think that this is all a good sign moving forward, that they're able to refresh and renew. And I don't take it so much as a red flag as I do a very weird timing where there's a lot of people kind of leaving, but it's not a mass exodus, and it's not people flailing around, and you're not getting a whole ton of leaks of this being a bad situation to be in. No one's being made to do things that they don't want to do. And honestly, it's to the most part, cheers, right? If you're going to find a better opportunity elsewhere, you want individuals to be able to seek that. I've never understood. Yeah, cheers to you as we drink our coffee today. The idea is that if you block, I've never understood the idea of blocking individuals from moving on, even if it's for a lateral move, right? If they don't want to be in the current position that they're in and they have an opportunity to seek elsewhere, let them go. And if they come back, it was meant to be, or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I can see where, I can see where you would want to, protect, like a Jim Leonard, right? Like somebody who is going to get so much attention for what he's doing that it's like, the New York Jets probably want to interview him to be, their defensive coordinator or whatever. That's a massive jump to go from like a DB coach to, right to defensive play caller.
Yeah, then you have to work for the Jets.
Yeah, and then you got to work for Woody Johnson. But like, if you really want that guy, and I feel like if you have a plan for that guy, right? Like you have a plan, and I think about it from like that corporate mindset of like, this is somebody who we really really like this person. We really like what they bring to our organization. The other people love them, their employees love them. We have this vision for them to be something bigger than what they are right now, but within the confines of our organization, you don't want to see them leave. And yes, like if they come back, it was meant to be, right? But there's a lot of times where, like, I think of Jim Leonard and Davis Webb in this light of like, Davis Webb could very well be the next offensive coordinator for the Denver Broncos, maybe even down the road, taking over for Sean Payton.
Wow.
I didn't say it. I'm just throwing it out there, right?
I was just saying play caller. You're saying head coach.
Hey, down the road. I mean, this guy's only what, 2-3 years into his like NFL coaching career. Let's pump the brakes a little bit. But like, if that is the plan, yeah, you don't want to see those people leave. Like Joe Lombardi was somebody that I thought was going to get a little bit more attention during the coaching carousel because of his, like, he's got extensive play calling experience in the NFL and really wasn't talked about all that much. Could have seen him going to New York, right? With Moogie. But yeah, I think when you have a plan for a certain person or a certain coach, and you want to really stick to that plan, and you want them in your building every day, I can see that as being a really good reason to block. But like these other coaching hires where these guys are getting big pay bumps, like they're getting big pay bumps and more responsibility, and like those coordinator jobs can eventually down the road lead to other coordinator jobs or head coaching gigs. Like there's so much opportunity. You want to see those guys have success. You want to see those guys go off and be successful. And like I said early in the show, Aaron Glenn shouted out Sean Payton for teaching him what a winning culture is about. That comment right there, he didn't thank Dan Campbell and all that stuff. Sean Payton, a man who like he has not coached with for a number of years, he gave him the shout out. I think that is a testament to how Sean Payton, runs his coaching staff, but also is just the extension of that winning culture. And that, like, the fact that Dan Campbell has gone on and had the success that he's had in Detroit and built this, had all these great coordinators that have been with him, that's all part of the Sean Payton tree, right? And they share the same philosophy, same vision for success. So it makes me feel a little excited for what's to come for the Denver Broncos. Sad to see some of these guys go. Passing game coordinator for the Broncos, John Morton, is going to Detroit with Dan Campbell to be the offensive coordinator, and tight ends coach Declan Doyle. I almost said Declan, but Declan Doyle is going to be the offensive coordinator for Ben Johnson in Chicago. So congratulations to those Broncos coaches, former Broncos coaches. They are getting the move on to bigger and better things. My cat is now calling for me outside. Bri, the Shrine Bowl, the East-West Shrine Bowl, and the Senior Bowl are underway. Well, the Shrine Bowl happened last night. The Senior Bowl will happen, I believe it's tomorrow or today. We had a couple of people that we knew down there at the Senior Bowl from Let's Talk Broncos, Jacob Romano and Frankie Films. They were down there killing it in Mobile, Alabama. Bri, the Senior Bowl is a great time to get some eyes on some of these prospects that are coming out in the NFL draft. It's also a really good time for Broncos coaches to get some up close and personal looks at some of these players. Who were some players from either one of these games that kind of stood out to you, or, as you're scrolling Twitter, you're seeing, clips of practice and highlights and all that stuff. Who stood out to you specifically for the Broncos? And is there a certain player that you took away from these games that you think you absolutely need to see in a Broncos uniform next year?
Okay, I'm going to give you a couple that are conventional and unconventional. One was confirmed priors because Joey Richards has been beaming about this individual. Frankie Abbott, who was there at the Senior Bowl, also known as Frankie's Films. I think we should call him by his alias. I like that better.
Yes.
They were raving, and it hit a soft spot as a Colorado fan, but Devin Neal, being available in the third round could be a really interesting prospect there. As long as he receives no contact up front, really unstoppable. And you saw that against really poor tackling against that Colorado team, but continue to shine out there. And I think it's really important to take that into context of maybe they even move up for this individual, because I think the skill set is something that Sean Payton would really enjoy. The vision's there, the burst is there, the lateral movements are there, and I'm really excited just by watching the clips that I've seen out of this prospect and remembering that game that was so troublesome this season. I was like, right, yeah, just absolutely terrible. But what came from that was that's the type of individual you want on your team. As the Denver Broncos run game continues to flail around, you would hope that they would improve. And I think Devin Neal is an instant improvement in that room. And I think he's an individual that Sean Payton could use to his fullest capacity. Also could be a great weapon in the pass game, which is an instant thumbs up and plus for me. So Devin Neal is the name that I'm really circling around. I don't think they would move up to 51 necessarily to get him in that second round, but I think you could do some really interesting moves, whether or not they're still planning, or I'm sorry, not planning. But if they were anticipating trading back, I think you could obviously use a later round pick to get a Devin Neal type. Deion Walker, not even in the same position, but oh my God, what a massive human being. Extreme outlier. And I don't know why my brain works like that. It's like caveman. And I saw the individual and said, I don't care if he floundered out there. I want to see what he's made out of, because if you are a giant human being and you have movement in your lower half like that, that is something that all teams can work with. I think the Broncos will end up going interior defensive line in the first round if they do keep that 20th pick. I know everyone in Broncos country loves the idea of an Ashton Genty, but you can get so many other prospects later in the draft that why not get the inevitable replacement for DJ Jones, or talk about contract years for JFM and Zach Allen that are going to be coming up. So maybe it's not Walker, because we've seen a little bit of questionable statuses there. Don't ask me about tight ends. I don't feel great about where that is right now, but it was interesting. And I want to get your takes on this, being an Oregon fan. Ferguson is climbing up the ranks, and I like both that blocking and pass catching ability, because I think it's better than a lot of the prospects and a lot of what people initially thought. I know Arroyo is climbing up the ranks, but I think Ferguson is the brighter prospect.
Yeah, I think that there's benefits of both prospects. This tight end class is, I saw Matt Miller say that this was an underrated, like before the Senior Bowl, he said this was an underrated class. And then literally after the first day of practices, he was like, wow, this tight end class is full of stars. Like, yeah, we knew. This is going to be the brightest spot of this draft class, and there are a ton of prospects out there for Broncos country to watch. I understand the hype and the love over Tyler Warren. Like, yes, that would be fantastic. He's not going to be there at 20. Sorry, like, I'm going to pop that bubble. But the draw of bringing in somebody like Terrence Ferguson from the University of Oregon, this is a guy who has had so much playing experience in college. Is a fantastic inline blocker. You can also use him as that type of move tight end where you can move him around, and he's still going to be an effective run blocker. He's still a great chip option, but this guy understands how to find the sticks. For a team that last season lacked that type of player, like somebody who can just find the sticks on 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8. Terrence Ferguson would be that guy. And guess what, Bri? You know what the best part of this is? He's got a relationship with the Broncos quarterback. Wow, who would have thought? That would be great. These guys understand each other. Terrence Ferguson had one of his best seasons in college football with Bo Nix. He was constantly a guy that Bo Nix would find on 3rd downs when they need to move the sticks. He's a guy who can create after the catch. He's not going to blow you away with the athleticism and the speed like an Arroyo would. Elijah Arroyo is a freak. That kid's a freak. He's moving like a basically an X receiver, and he's just a massive guy. He can block, he can run great routes. He is explosive in and out of his breaks. He's fantastic. But if you're looking for a tight end who you can just plug into this offense and get instant impact and have that the mental understanding between the quarterback and the tight end, fantastic. Do it. He's a guy. Yeah, don't even second guess it. Now I can see where Tez Johnson has gotten quite a bit of hype from his Senior Bowl performance, and that's fine. The measurables leave a lot to be desired. Weighing in at 156 was rough.
I'm uncomfortable, Pat. If I don't want to body shame anyone, but 156 pounds, regardless of the style that you play, you go up against some of these DBs and they're going to annihilate you.
Yeah. And I mean, we've seen him take some big shots this year, and it's tough, but he knows how to get separation. So I can see where, that would be a fun pick for Broncos country, but they need a tight end. They need somebody who Bo can trust on 3rd down to find the sticks. We need somebody who can win those contested catches. I'm begging Broncos country. Go watch some games where Terrence Ferguson has just gone off, and you'll see this guy make the craziest catches in really crucial situations. The Big Ten championship game, Penn State and Oregon. I remember specifically, I can't remember if it was the 3rd or 4th quarter, but Dillon Gabriel, it was 3rd down and 9. And Dillon Gabriel has to roll to his left. He's rolling to his left. He looks like he's throwing this ball into triple coverage. And Terrence Ferguson came away with the ball, one-handed catch, right above the ground for a 1st down. In the most crucial part of the game. If they didn't get this 1st down, Penn State is probably going down the field and scoring again to take the lead. And they extended the drive. That's the type of player that the Broncos need, is someone that we can rely on in those situations when the receivers are covered. There's no other options. We didn't have that. Lucas Kroll isn't making those plays. Adam Trautman isn't making those plays. Nate Adkin is. No, they need someone else. There's so many tight ends in this class, Brian. You brought up the interior defensive line. Love that, because I think at 20, if Walter Nolan from Ole Miss is there, pull the trigger. I think Deion Walker, you maybe could get in the 2nd round because of the play concerns. But man, that guy is, if he can play with length, hey, I'm good. That's fine. He was pushing guys in the backfield all week. But there's also some offensive linemen, Bri, that I also saw at the Senior Bowl that I wouldn't mind. A couple of centers who could be instant upgrades, I think, over Luke Wattenberg. Just watching their run blocking technique, especially Jonah Monheim from USC. Yes. I saw him early in the season, and I saw him getting a little bit of hype, and I was like, okay, this guy's big. Kind of reminded me of Joe Tippmann from Wisconsin a little bit, just a massive frame. But he's kind of getting bullied a little bit. But man, his run blocking skills were so good. He can climb to the next level with the best of them. There were a couple D2, D3 guys that were making my eyebrows raise a little bit. So definitely some targets to watch. I'll be watching the Senior Bowl for sure. But yeah, that was your center pick. That was also the guy that I saw. So yeah, I think there's going to be plenty for Broncos country to watch in these games. But keep your eyes on the tight ends, keep your eyes on the centers. I think that they could be very big options in the 3rd, 4th round, like you said. Devin Neal is a great running back prospect. I think this class is also super deep at running back. But I just get the vibes from Neal. Like I definitely get the vibes that he would be a lot of fun to watch in the Sean Payton offense. Bri, let's finish off this show with the most disappointing topic, the Super Bowl, right? Another Chiefs Super Bowl. Why does this keep happening, Bri?
It's easy, Pat. It's a simple combination. It's the same thing we were talking about when the Patriots were so dominant, except I was on the other side of the aisle for that conversation. Let's talk about Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. I get a little excited in the bad way talking about this because I hate to see it coming. And we all knew that this was the result we were going to get. Maybe we thought they'd be facing off against another or a different NFC team, but it's the Chiefs and Eagles, and the Eagles are our only hope. I'm frustrated by it. I am concerned about the narratives coming out of this if they three-peat. But at the end of the day, they're already starting. You have individuals trying to match up Patrick Mahomes with the Tom Brady already, right? And I just want to put a solid stop on where I stand on that conversation. But I'm not in support of the Lombardi Trophy being renamed. So let's all get that right. I'm at least a little bit more stable in my fandom now. But Pat, I don't know why it keeps happening other than teams are not stepping up to the ability and opportunity to beat a team that is not as good as they were in years past. And I don't want to take it away from any of the greatness that they've been able to accomplish. I think back to our conversation about a reliable tight end, you see that in Travis Kelce.
Right.
Wide open all of the time, unable to be tackled easily. If the Broncos want to compete with that, they have to start mimicking that. But I don't want to get it twisted with they need to replicate anything. The Broncos need to find their identity in the Super Bowl era of this contention with the AFC West as those teams continue to get more competitive. I mean, you have Pete Carroll now for the Raiders, so I don't know how much longer we're going to be able to make fun of that organization. So at a certain point, the Broncos are going to have to raise to the occasion here. But at the end of the day, the Eagles right now are the savior of the NFL because I think there's a vast majority of us as football fans who don't want to see the red and yellow take this home. Big games and big opportunities present themselves. Jalen Hurts is going to have to play outside of the box that he's been relegated to. You saw and you've seen that the only thing keeping him back from kind of that elite quarterback play is his ability to not always lean on his legs. In the last couple of games, he's been able to pass. He's doing the Lamar Jackson thing where nobody can really hold Jalen Hurts back except for himself and the concussions that he's been suffering. If Jalen Hurts is healthy during this Super Bowl, they get it done, right? I think they're the more talented team. They're the more well-rounded team. They're the team that's building towards this instead of trying to get the last bit out of this present team. But the Chiefs sometimes, I want to know, Pat, from you, with the Chiefs and their ability to continuously procure talent and keep coaches, it's not a money thing. It's got to be a dynasty conversation. Like they've bred so much pride that players want to play for the Kansas City Chiefs, and maybe they're taking relatively safer options there because I can't explain it otherwise. There's no way they can continue to be the freaking I was going to make a baseball joke, but I'm so far removed from that conversation.
The Yankees of the NFL.
Yeah, then maybe the Dodgers now.
First of all, no one's ever going to touch the Yankees in terms of championships. Okay, that's ridiculous.
That's talking money.
26 championships. Gee whiz. Granted, most of those were in the 50s, that way before anything important to happen in baseball. Just kidding, baseball enthusiasts. Don't come after me. No, I think it's kind of weird, right? Like with how good with how good the Kansas City defense has been over the last few years, this was like the first year that in recent memory that Steve Spagnuolo has gotten legitimate head coaching consideration, and he didn't even take a job. Like, I don't even think he interviewed. But like people were like, "Oh yeah, Raiders are targeting Steve Spagnuolo. Why would he do that? Why would he go there? That's a shame. We don't believe that." What do they have? Because Bri, we didn't even talk about the report cards in the last episode. Kansas City has had like the worst grade for the last 2 years.
Like overall?
Yeah. Like, I'm sorry, you're Super Bowl champions. Like, they hate the ownership group. The players hate the ownership group. They talk about it in those surveys. It's been like the last 2-3 years. They've given them an F. Like, why do you want to play there? What's the reasoning?
Super Bowl rings or
the
dirt?
Reason, or dirt. Who? I mean, look, underneath that stadium, there's got to be some kind of like satanic ritual going on, right? Like there's no way all of these things happen in the stadium and there isn't some like voodoo doll. Roger Goodell is down below the stadium after every game with a voodoo doll of the quarterback, of the opposing team's quarterback, just going like like it's ridiculous. No, I think what it comes down to is Andy Reid has built a stronger culture within the coaching staff and with the players than that they could survive anything. They could survive bad ownership. They could survive less than stellar, locker room conditions. They can survive any of that because to Andy Reid is just about winning, right? One of the greatest offensive minds in the sport of football, really competitive dude. And I think they just love to win. And all the ref stuff aside, like this is still a very good football team. This is still like they have a great defense. They have great defensive players. The scouting department was awesome for a really, really long time. And they were able to get some really great players. Trent McDuffie has turned into one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. Draft crush, by the way. Loved him at UW. Nick Bolton, another one of those guys who like everybody overlooked in that draft class. Chris Jones went in the second round. What? Like that's crazy. But they get it done. And that's on them. Patrick Mahomes, they got Patrick Mahomes at 10. At 10. Do we remember who was it? Who was first overall in that class? Was it Trubisky? No, Trubisky was second.
No, that was the year before, right?
Trubisky was second. No, same draft. Trubisky and Mahomes were in the same draft. Same as Josh Allen. Crazy, right? So they get these players in these situations, and they're just great players. But that's kudos to the scouting department, and it's kudos to how Brett Veach has worked the contracts and the money and all that to keep this team so competitive for as long as they have, right? They trade Tyreek Hill at the peak. They get all those. They used Snead up until he was fine. They traded him to Tennessee. What has he done? Nothing, right? So they basically just use him up, and then all right, we're done with you. We don't really need you anymore because we've moved on to the next thing. So I think it's just the culture of coaching that they have in that building. The scouting department has been great. But that's why they keep being in these situations. Vic Fangio, you are our only hope. You are the only hope to end this madness. Now, Bri, I have a very important question for you. I hate doing predictions. I hate doing score predictions. What's your prediction for this Super Bowl? Just not even a score.
Oh, I was like, that feels in complete contrast to what you just said. My prediction. You want like a legitimate one, or you want?
Yeah. What do you think is going to happen?
Saquon Barkley has the most touchdowns of any player on the field.
Ooh.
I think
Saquon touchdown over.
Hammer it. and take two, take first, take whatever you need to do there. If Jalen Hurts has any indication towards a knee injury or a slowdown or wants to lean more into the pass, they're going to give it to Saquon. It's the hot hand. It's more than the hot hand. It's like you cannot miss with Saquon. So I'm going to lean heavily into him being the savior. But also this game is hard for me to predict just because it could go in so many different directions, and I refuse to pick against the Chiefs. So I'm saying Chiefs win it.
Yeah, a little reverse psychology.
Yeah, like I don't care if I'm wrong. I just can't.
If it happens, you're like, yes, I was right. If it doesn't happen, you're like, yes, I was right.
You're talking about black magic over here with the like voodoo dolls and all of that stuff, and I didn't want to like show you my altar that I have that's for the Super Bowl.
Right,
but also I'm thinking more like mob related, right? It is Kansas City, so
yeah. Well, I mean, Sirianni, Fangio.
What's that weird coach's
the
bodyguard's name?
Yeah, Big Dom. Big Dom. Yeah, I think we're gonna see an Andy Reid, Vic Fangio classic. I think that's gonna be like they are just gonna two old big guys just like just going at it. I think Buffalo did a good job of exposing some of the gaps in Kansas City's run defense. So I could absolutely see them trying to take advantage of that. I'm going to tell you right now, this Kansas City team, the tackles are not ready for the pass rush that is coming out of it. This is a different pass rush than the Chiefs saw a couple years ago against the Eagles. It's also a different secondary. Kenyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, two very, very good players.
Can you mention Jalen Carter and how scary that man is?
Did you see him just rock the Washington center to the point where he turned the center, like took the punch and then turned the other way? Like this is a scary. Hey, at least he stayed at the scene. All right. I think it's going to be a completely different defense, and Vic Fangio has that experience coaching with the Broncos, of playing against Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. I am going to say that the Eagles take this one because I think this defense is so different from what the Chiefs have seen. I think that they are hungry. They've got guys who are backups playing, who are just lighting it up right now. But you just can't let them stay in it. Don't let them stay in it. Jalen Hurts, if there's a run play, don't kill it. Just give the ball to Saquon, because if I have to see Kenny Pickett play in the Super Bowl, I'm going to lose my GD head. Yeah, that's gonna be it. That's gonna be it for me. So
no pushes. No, I'm over it.
Okay, two prop bets, Bri. Two prop bets for you, and you tell me if you're going over or under here. Okay. Okay, first one, the number of tush pushes that we see in the Super Bowl. I'm going to set the over under at 5.5. Are you going over or under?
In a game like this, with time of possession being such a giant deal of you can't give up any opportunity to leave points on the board. I'm going over, and if it's 6, I'm going to start pulling like my own teeth out, I think is what's going to happen.
Okay, second prop bet. It's not going to be a Taylor Swift one.
Oh, thank God.
The number of false starts that Jawan Taylor has before they throw a flag. I'm setting the over-under at 8.5. Over or under?
All I could think about when you said that was Vulu just like throwing himself through the air to try to prevent push. Like I was in a completely different mindset. Or the Lois Griffin meme.
Yeah.
You're pulling some Jeff Hardy Swanton bomb stuff.
Right.
Okay. 8.5. Under.
Full.
If you're responsible for that many, like single-handedly, you cost your team the Super Bowl. I have to go under because there's no way I can no.
Well, remember, this is the number of false starts he gets away with before they call a penalty.
Oh, before they call a penalty. I'm sorry. I misheard. I was distracted by my
No,
own
you're
jokes
fine.
and visual stimulation. Before. Yeah, honestly, okay. We just had a conversation about the refs not being that big of a deal for Kansas City, but they are notorious for kind of letting that go. And I know holds happen on every single play. It has to be egregious in order to get the call. Pat, I would say by our definition of a hold, I think we're pretty level-headed in that
False start.
conversation. False
False
start.
start.
False start.
So how he's Jawan Taylor leans.
Yep,
Like
he leans
he's
every
supposed to
single
be
time.
set and he leans and then he jumps early. How many
Yeah.
times? 8.5 is what I have it set at.
Let's go over because I like how I'm trying to come up with a word to use here. I like that you went
How
8.5.
consistent he
Like,
is.
well,
How consistent he is at that.
Consistency, and I like that yours seems absurd, but it like falls in line with what we've seen in the past. And
Right.
sorry, I'm dealing with a cat over here too. So
It's all good. Bri, that's going to do it for us until the week of the Super Bowl. We'll be back next episode. We're going to do a fun little experiment. We're going to do a Broncos mock draft before the Super Bowl. So after the Senior Bowl, after the Shrine Bowl, things have kind of settled down in the draft world for a little bit. But we're going to come back with a Broncos only mock draft. We're going to talk a little bit about some of our picks, and it'll be a fun little exercise. Thank you so much for listening and watching. This a 47-minute episode. It's great. You can follow Bri and myself on X or Blue Sky at Bri Maestas 303 at Patrick Chiotti. Make sure that you follow at Bleav Network as well. Subscribe to the show, leave a review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on, and go over and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Bri, always good to see you. Thank you so much, and go Broncos.
the Broncos.